History remembers what happened, but it is shaped by moments when everything could have turned another way. A decision, a journey, a single moment. This is where we explore them. When history turned. I was rearranging my notes this morning and realized how often I end up saying, consult one trusted source, as if such a place exists in the same way everywhere. Is there a reality where that is different?
Imagine a morning in another present. A graduate named Miriam walks into the great reading hall of Alexandria's continuous library. She carries a thin notebook, a tablet with replicated papyrus, and a list of experiments. The stacks hum with living marginalia. Colleagues have annotated, replicated, and corrected centuries of apparatus descriptions. She asks for a hydraulic design. In minutes, she holds 3 independent reconstructions from different eras, each with replication logs and material lists. Miriam sits at a bench used by generations of surveyors. She follows an 18th century replication of a 4th century automaton, then cross-references a translation from classical Greek into Syriac and a later commentary that shows an experimental failure and correction. Knowledge is layered, not lost. In practical terms, that means instruments improve faster because mistakes are visible and recoverable. In public life, this shows up in ordinary ways. Building codes that quote antiquity and medieval replications, apprenticeship systems that trust a single archival reference, and university entrance based on demonstrated replication rather than citation alone. The library is not mythic. It is administrative, legal, and constantly used.
This sketch is fascinating, but where precisely does that divergence begin? Did the library never burn? Or did something else change that kept texts accessible?
The timeline shows continuity, yes, but it is not a single prevented fire. Look for institutionalization, a legal transformation that converts the library into a protected corporate entity, a continuity of patronage that outlives the empire. Those are the patterns one would expect where manuscripts remain abundant and connected.
So you point to law and organization rather than luck. Did that happen early? Or is it a later Reformation? Who made that decision, and in which century?
Clues cluster in late antiquity. You see coordinated translations into local scholarly languages, administrative records that treat the library as a civic archive, and military logistics that include protocols for moving collections. The hints point to a policy change embedded in municipal and imperial practice rather than a single hero. Do you want the specific moment to place on your timeline?
Yes. Lay out the context, political pressures, scholarly networks, and the practical steps that turn a fragile collection into a living institution. I need the key elements that would make that alternate present plausible.
The divergence is concentrated in the late 4th century. In that line, there is a municipal charter that recognizes the Great Library as a legal corporation with imperial endorsement. That charter establishes 3 practical mechanisms. 1, a distributed redundancy policy that copies core holdings to affiliated centers along the Mediterranean. 2, a protected cadre of librarian scholars who hold tenure-like privileges under civic law. And 3, a protocol for translating and integrating texts into local scholarly languages, beginning with Syriac and Coptic, which maintains use across political changes. Those 3 institutional changes reduce dispersal and loss. Over the next centuries, the library functions as an active research and administrative archive rather than a passive stockpile. Century by century, the differences unfold predictably. In classical antiquity, continuity preserves commentaries and experimental notes. In the early medieval period, libraries act as municipal technical centers, keeping engineering techniques and medical recipes in living practice. In the high medieval centuries, translation schools and archival charters seed proto-universities earlier, so the scholastic and empirical traditions converge sooner. By the time of the Renaissance in this timeline, printing amplifies an already rich critical apparatus. The scientific method formalizes earlier, because there are replicated failures to study. The industrial transformations begin sooner in some regions because mechanical knowledge is more widely distributed. And into our alternate present, computed archival indexes and institutional accreditation create a culture where authoritative, replicable sources are the norm. By contrast, in our reality, the loss and dispersal of texts, fragments, lines of practical experimentation. Recoveries are often discontinuous, and the social authority of knowledge is more contested.
When I asked whether a single trusted source could be normal, you described Merriam finding an answer in a public, curated chain of evidence. That sounds almost utopian, but it also concentrates authority. What does that mean politically and socially in that world? The key difference is trade-offs. Continuous preservation produces institutional memory, faster technical progress, and a common set of reference experiments so ordinary life sees fewer reinventions and more reliable building. But centralization also grants archivists and civic authorities real gatekeeping power. In short, yes, there is a reality where asking for one trusted source is normal. It is a world shaped by sustained institutional guardianship beginning in late antiquity. The lesson for us is not that we should copy the past exactly, but that legal frameworks, redundancy, and multilingual integration are concrete tools that change how knowledge survives and circulates.
If this wasn't the only timeline you'd like to visit, subscribe.